Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Ray Samich and would like to introduce all of you to my radio colleague, co-host, more importantly, my spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. I am just coming back from an event that we have been able to put on, and I apologize for not being with everybody last week. A number of people were texting me and emailing me and saying they missed the show, so we appreciate when you miss us, but we always try to at least have a pre-recorded show. And speaking of those, they're out there at our Stress-Free Living YouTube channel. Just check that out anytime you'd like a little refresher on some of the topics we talk about on our YouTube channel, Stress-Free Living Radio. Ratanjit, we've done a number of shows on fear of death because that is something that most people have, and it's come up so many times in conversations with them. We've brought it to our discussion table several times, and it's understandable because we know we're going to die, and we don't know when, most of us. So it's understandable that that's in our mind. It's in the, in the backs of our mind all the time that could this be the last morning I wake up? Could this be the last time I kiss my spouse goodbye, or I see my children, or am I going to be able to accomplish what I want to before I die? Those are, I think, understandable feelings that we have. But I don't want to talk about that today. I want to talk about the opposite of that. I want to talk about all the people, and I personally believe there's many, many of us that actually have a fear of living. We don't do what we really want to do. We don't go where we want to go. We don't try things that we want to try. We don't really even plan for our future because we don't know if we should even try to do that or if we should just be happy, content with what life gives us. And I don't want to sound judgmental, but I feel bad for those people that do that. And I wanted to do a show today to really maybe reach some people that are afraid to live, and they have so much that they could be doing with their life to really feel fulfilled and feel joy and feel contentment with themselves. Does this make sense? Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen what I'm talking about in action?
Yeah, sure. Growing up, my dad used to tell me that in order to succeed, you cannot have fear of failure. In order to live, you cannot have fear of death. So, although you don't want to talk about the fear of death, basically fear of living is directly tied to the fear of death. Until you don't have fear of dying, you cannot live. We don't invest into things because we are afraid of losing. We don't do these things. We are afraid of making a wrong decision. We don't trust this guy because I don't want to be taken advantage of. And all this fear prevents us from doing things in retrospect, they are living. in order to live, once you go to a place, say you're going to Hawaii, and you are there only for 5 days or 7 days, so you are going to see everything you can see. You're going to experience everything about Hawaii you can experience, because you are only there for small time.
Right.
So what happens to us is we think this life is permanent and we want to preserve it. So once we conceive that we are only here for a small time, and it is not good or bad, it's not a bad thing that we are going to go home. So in this life, you have to experience things. That is called living.
Right.
So your mind becomes very curious and you want to try things. Now, that is what prevents us from living, because we want, this is life, this is it. I want to hold it. I don't want to get out of this life. So basically, it is a fear of death, because death takes you away from this life, this thing. So you basically want to hold on, rather than, this is, if a toy is given to a child, and this toy is, instead of playing with that toy, he wants to hold on to this. A child basically plays with the toy. He's not afraid of breaking it or doing anything. If adult wisdom is implanted in a child, he would preserve it. He would not, he would take the toy and not to abuse it, he's going to not play with it fully, because he is afraid of damaging the toy. So when you are a child, you are not afraid of breaking things.
Right. Right.
You play.
I'm still I'm a little confused. I don't know if we're exactly on the same page, or if I'm just not understanding how you're saying it. But since you mentioned children, I wanted to go there for sure. Children don't seem to have a fear of anything. Okay, we
Yeah.
put the fear in them. We tell them that stove is hot. We tell them don't ride their bicycle in the street. We tell them things that we should tell them, not to get hurt. But we put the fear in. The child is fearless. I mean, they'll climb any tree, not worried about falling. They will, go into the water, not being afraid of drowning. They will do anything because it looks like fun. It looks like an adventure. They will do whatever they want to do. Like you said, they're not damaged. They're not worried about breaking a toy. They want to play with the toy. They want to play with things that aren't toys. They want to play with $1,000 camera because it looks exciting and fun. So they'll play with it. When do we lose that? When do we lose that childish, fearless attitude that says, I can be a fireman, I can be an astronaut, I can be an engineer, I can be, anything I want to be, I can do it. What is it about life that says, no, you can't? The reality is you're going to be stuck with this. You're limited. You aren't empowered to be anything you want to be. You're not that good. You're not that smart. You're not that pretty. You're not that talented. Whatever it is, why do we settle? Why do so many of us settle for not being the way we were when we were a child?
Our education system, our parents, our neighbors, or people around us basically systematically teach a child growing up fear of failure. Don't do this is going to, this happen, this happen. So it's consistently you are implanting in the child restrictions. Basically you watch the instruction from any parents to a child. Basically, it's always don't do this, do this, don't talk like this,
Right.
right? It's
Yeah.
always, how many don'ts we tell a child during the day. So eventually that thing gets implanted. And because you are always worried about a failure, I don't want to fail. And eventually a child doesn't have the ego. And when we grow up, that ego is, what will people say? You will be called failure. So that indirectly instills a false ego. And suddenly, because of being condemned by somebody, you don't do things. You live life what others are going to think about you rather than what you want to do. Right?
Definitely. Definitely. We're afraid to venture out and do something. And you've nailed that. And I think a lot of it does come back from our parents. Um, and as a parent myself, I mean, I know that that's what I did. I says, don't do that because this will happen. And you try to take your parental wisdom because of things you've learned, that have gone wrong for you, and you don't want your kids to make those mistakes. So it is done out of love. It's done with good intentions, but we're either telling them what not to do, or when we tell them to do things, we're saying color in the lines. The lines are there for a reason. So color in the lines, you know, and you taught me that many years ago in these shows. I mean, if you give a kid a white, clear piece of paper, they will draw anything and everything. It could be amazing what they would put on that plain piece of paper. But if you give them a picture of something that has lines in it, you say color in the lines. And therein, I think, is the entire difference of somebody who is more prone to be adventurous and more prone to be creative and more likely to live their life than others that say, if I color outside the lines, my dad will be mad at me. And you kind of carry that whole mindset with you, I think, through your whole life, that I have to live by coloring within the lines. And how can we, if that's so deeply embedded in us, if that fear of failure and maybe even, as you said, fear of death is tied to this, fear of not being um, considered smart or considered successful or considered brave by our other peers. If that's so deeply embedded in us, is that something we can overcome, or do we just have to start teaching these kids a different way at a much younger age?
You use a sentence because I prevent my children not to do this because of my love.
Yeah.
Most of the time, we mistake our love and call your love as our possessions. Love is completely boundaryless. It's not mine. When you love somebody, you cannot possess them. You have to give that person total freedom. Now, typically When you love your spouse, you love your, if there are two people who love each other, and one of them found out this other person who you love basically loves somebody else.
Mhm.
So that is the true test of love. If you really love, then you will make the condition which is conducive to meeting this other person who your loved one loves, because you are only thinking of pleasing, giving that person happiness. But typically, we break up with them. We become their enemies because they are not mine anymore. So love, which we call love in this life, is merely a possession. Most of us do not know how to love. Love is always unconditional. The moment you put conditions on love, it is not love. So, minor correction, when we bring up our life, bring the wisdom into our children, first thing which happens to it is mine. You know, this old story, which is worth repeating, remember there was a king who was very kind. He would go in different time, in different, he would dress up differently so nobody would recognize, and he will find out what is depressing, what is causing harm to his public, and he would eventually find a solution to that. So he was always serving their people. So in the old time, it was customary for a king to have a harem of queens. So he had 200 queens, and he had sons and daughters with them. So although he could not pay attention to each child, and they were basically considering themselves as a son of the king or daughter of the king. And they would do atrocious things. They would cause havoc. So once he came to know this, it disturbed him very much. So he called one of his advisor, wise men, and said, "What should I do?" So he looked at the king and he says, "Sir, you are most beloved by your public. And these kids needs attention. They need love. So why don't you place your child in a family as a child for the family, and they will take care of him, although he will remain as the child of the king." Now, if you were selected as that family to nurture that child, so that child given to you remains the son or daughter of the king. So you cannot beat him up. You have to keep your house clean. You cannot smoke or drink in front of him. You have to reconstruct your mannerism, and you have to educate the son and the king in the right manner. So you have to change your lifestyle to nurture the king. But in real life, we have been chosen by the greatest king on this universe. The children are gift from the divine power to us. They are not ours. And we call them ours. So that is where the problem lies. Right?
Yeah, you shared that story many, many times, but I love it. I love to hear it because it does remind me when I hear that story of that fact, which is so true, and then I forget, unfortunately, again. The the love, and we've gone, I think, off track here. And by the way, when you talk about two people that love each other and then a third person coming in that's also loved, and how that original person should act, that's another show that I think we should do, because that's quite a topic there that I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing about, and some people might be very upset to hear about some of the things that we would say in that show, but I think it's worthy of another program. So let's put that topic aside here for another day. But the idea of loving your child and trying to, not even as a possession, Ratanjit, not even if I were to do it knowing this was the king's son or daughter in my home. But I would try to help them lovingly so that they don't make the same mistakes that hurt me. That I would say, this happened to me when I was 15, and I don't want it to happen to you. I remember how much pain I felt when I endured that situation. I don't want my son or daughter to have that same experience. So I say, stay away from this. Or when you see smoke, that means there's fire there. So go the other direction, or don't get caught into that conversation that will very likely end badly. I don't, respectfully, I don't think that I would share those things with my child because I think of them as my possession. Whether I thought of them as the king's son or daughter or mine, I would still want to respect their feelings and not have them experience the pain. And I'm belaboring this point because I think that's part of this other issue. I think that's part of the reason we don't live, is because we are afraid of the pain that we have experienced before in life. We took a chance. When I was 13 years old, I took a chance on something and everybody laughed at me. And so I can't get that out of my brain. So now I'm 23 or I'm 33 or I'm 73, and I still remember that time when my peers all laughed at me when I tried. I want to come back and talk about that after this break. How do we overcome maybe some of the memories, some of the bad experiences we had in our life, and put those aside and move on with it? Some of us just hold on to those bad experiences and we can't ever forget that they happened. Should we learn from those? Should we forget them? I wanted, that's what I want to talk about with Ratanjit on this edition of Stress Free Living. We're talking about living and a fear of living. Are we giving it all we've got? We'll come back and talk much more about that on this edition of Stress Free Living. Stay with us. All right. Open up the mics. Anybody have a comment, a question for Ratanjit to take on what we're talking about? Got 90 seconds. Share a thought if you have one.
Yeah, I think, yes, Sandy, I definitely understand what Ratanjit is speaking about, given that so much of our fear is through conditioning. Um, I feel often our limits are because of conditioning, be it family, friends, or people that as you said, Ray, have all the best intentions, but um, don't want you to be disappointed or don't want you to go out there and do what your heart desires because they feel that if you fail, you're going to be disappointed and maybe throw you off your life track. So a lot of conditioning has taken place in our lives.
You're right.
Right. And that's what we're going to come back with to see, can we overcome that conditioning, or is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not, at this point, I'm not sure. Thanks. Okay, I don't think we have much time, but anybody else, Sudeep or Jagjeet, anything quickly? Okay,
I
go
I
ahead.
would hold off to the next one. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. It took a while. But anyway, I think it's a good point. I think how do we strike a balance between one extreme that is you are completely controlling to another one where you can do whatever you want. Doesn't matter whether you fall in a well or not. I mean, that's sort of the extremes, right? So I would like to
Right.
kind of understand how do you strike that balance? Because I think maybe it's because of our conditioning. We don't want.
We're back on Stress Free Living. Have a conversation with our wonderful Zoom guest. If you would like to be part of that, visit again our YouTube channel and you can get that link so you can join us live and be part of our Zoom guests. And we have a great conversation. We're limited during the breaks, but after the show, we can have unlimited time to share with them and with you if you're part of that group. Ratanjit, getting some good feedback. And a word came up called conditioning in our conversation with our guests. And I think that's a really good word. We are conditioned as recipients of all of this feedback that we're getting from our parents, from our maybe our church leaders, our teachers, wherever it is, we're getting conditioned on this is the way to do things. This is the way to handle yourself. These are the colors, I'm sorry, the lines that you have to color within. That conditioning is there to protect us. It's there to make it supposedly easier and better for us based on what other people have experienced when they ventured outside of those lines. They had tough things, and so they're trying to protect us. But the very nature of that conditioning limits us from doing a lot of the things that we want to do and being a lot of the person we want to be. So how do we walk that line that says we want to be protected, we don't want to be hurt, but we want to be all that we can be?
You know, what happens is when a child comes on this earth, they have no fear, they have no greed, they have no insecurity, and they have no ego. Systematically, whatever, whether we call is upbringing by the parents or by our society or everything, we constantly bombard that child that your name is this, you are a separate entity, you are this is going to burn you, this is going to hurt you, you cannot do this because, so no. So we systematically inculcate certain ways of living. So we give that child certain habits of living in fear, habits of this is mine, possessions, habits of what are the other people going to say? They're not going to say you're a good child. So the ego comes in that child. So we give those conditions to that child. So systematically, the society, parents, our education system or media forces that new human being to operate in these values. And these values are basically the values of this destroyable, unlimited human body. Human body has a fear of death. Human body considers itself as a separate entity. It has ego. Human body would starve. It has to have food. It has greed. Human body is constantly insecure because it doesn't know what is in for in the future. So systematically, we implant this child in a human body mode. So the brain, which is constantly influenced by the human body mode, we never tell the child who that child is. Human body is not the child. Human body is in which the child lives. And until we tell the child that enlivening force enlivens this human body, without this human body would be dead. So who is he? He is the power which enlivens this human body. And once that enlivening force runs the brain, makes all the decisions, and sees everything around us through those eyes, fear, greed, insecurity, ego disappears. Otherwise, you can tell all you want. Ego is not a good thing. Fear is not a good thing. This is not a good thing. We are still going to have those if we are being operated by the human body mode. This knowledge is not ever given to us, not through our education, not through our science, not through our religions, although religions are based in this concept. But the preachers of the religions are parked in the human body mode. They cannot see it. So unless we change the paradigm of thinking from the human body mode to the oneness mode, which power lies within you, is the same power which lies within everyone else, making us all one. We cannot, all the good things we do, they are done by ego to get prize, to get trophies. We don't do anything unconditionally. And that is how we live our life. Even what we call these people has no fear, climbs a mountain, goes into these things. They're all ego-driven. They are not incentivized by the power within us. I don't know whether I make any sense, Ray.
You do, but I want some clarification. You talk about people that climb a mountain, and I was just with a large group of people for about a week, and there were mountain climbers in there. There were marathon runners in there. There were people that were adventurists. They were, they write their own scripts in terms of what they want to do with their life, and they take chances, and they take chances in life. They take chances with their finances. They take chances with their time and their energy and putting it in certain places. They are not, I would say that those are the people that are living, okay, to be very simple about it. They are the people that are enjoying their life and they're living their life. Not to say that there's not bad things that happen to them. I'm sure there are, and life is what it is for everybody, but they're trying to live their best life. I I don't I don't see how that is ego based. I don't understand that last point that you had made. They seem to be doing it, and when I do it, and I don't climb mountains, but when I take a chance and I put myself out there, I don't do it because of ego. I do it because I want to give of myself. I know that I only have so many years, so many days, so I want to be all that I can be and do all that I can do and help all that I can help. How is that ego?
Because when you climb a mountain, who gets benefit from it? What
There's
is the purpose?
satisfaction. There's satisfaction, but
Satisfaction
it is,
of who?
well, I mean,
Okay, supposing you
shouldn't,
climb the mountain and nobody knows.
right. That's
Nobody
exactly
knows.
my point.
But
If
they tell you that they are mountain climbers.
but
Why
the fulfillment of anything that's really challenging
now
is
if it is if
self-fulfillment.
it is a policeman or a firefighter who climbs the mountain to get their body in proper shape, I can understand the purpose of mountain climbing. But simply by climbing the mountain to get a trophy, get a acclaim by somebody that I climbed the mountain is nothing but ego. You have to tie your everything you think and do with a purpose. That is only going to give you the fearless living. When the purpose is clear, when you understand you are the divinity within you, and your purpose is to serve the divinity within others, and you are going to enhance your skills and capabilities of servicing others. So then you indulge into exercises and knowledge and other things, so you enhance your capability to serve others, not to get trophies or medals. Once you do certain thing only to get trophies and medals, it doesn't work. You know, I have to tell you a story. There was a candidate who won 8 gold medals in swimming. And as he got older, and people didn't remember him, because that only at the time you are on the podium and you get gold medal, your picture is printed and interviews and all those happen, and nobody would recognize him. Very few people would know. And as the time went, he said, my goodness, nobody remembers me. He got into depression. You know, the main purpose of a podium is whenever you climb on the podium because you did something, that podium gives you a new opportunity to serve. Now, when he was coming out of those 7 or 8 gold medals, and if he formed an academy or something and trained youngsters to swim and did something better for the society, he would be remembered. So ultimately, having those medals, climbing the Mount Everest is not going to do anything until you take that platform as gives you opportunity that only gives you a podium to add higher value, to reach more people. And if you do not do that, the world would not remember you. And suddenly your ego is going to be hurt because nobody remembers you, in spite of the fact you had 7 or 8 gold medals. Now, do I make any sense?
Oh, no, that makes tremendous sense. And the fact that that we have those opportunities because of our accomplishments to be able to reach people with a message that they wouldn't necessarily be open to hear if we didn't have that platform. I mean, you and I have talked about that a lot, although maybe not openly on the show, is that it's so crazy that celebrities, whether they're singers or actors or whatever it might be, athletes, we put them up on a pedestal, and then when they give their political views or they give their social views, we want to listen to them as if they're authorities, and they're not authorities, but they have that a platform, and so now we listen to them. It's so sad, really, because they are in a position where they could be doing so much good. They could be really opening up our minds and our hearts and our souls to so much good information. And a couple of them do, but the great majority of them talk nonsense. They spew out words that aren't even worth listening to. And it's frustrating. So I agree with you that if we do earn that podium, then we need to use that for the right messaging. And we have that opportunity to really take that moment of our fame, if you want to call it that, and put the right words out, oneness and unconditional love and all of those things. So I'm right in with you on. What I'm still confused about, though, is the ego versus the self-fulfillment. If I will never climb a mountain, I'm incapable of doing that, especially at my age of my life. But if I were to climb a mountain, if I talk to these people that do it, they do it for the inner satisfaction. I really believe even if they didn't get a trophy at the end, even if they didn't get somebody that says, oh, wow, you climbed a mountain, the people that I'm talking about just get inner gratification that they were able to do it, that they persevered, they had the discipline, they reached the top of the mountain. I guess is all pride like that? Is all feeling that I was able to do something, is that always ego? Is that, I mean, they don't do it for the acclaim, they don't do it for the trophy, but they do it for the inner knowing that they did it. Is that ego too?
Until your final purpose in life is not to accumulate gold medals and trophies and these accolades. The final purpose in life, because you are sent here as a special, unique person. You have some very unique qualities. And it is through those uniqueness you bring a different kind of service to the oneness, the humanity. And if you want to develop certain disciplines, and those disciplines come into you by mountain climbing, then I can understand. All these exercises, if they are developing certain habits, certain skills in you, so that those skills can be translated to adding higher value, then it is not ego. Otherwise, it is all ego.
Okay. Okay. And I can definitely appreciate that. I think if it makes us better, if it makes us more disciplined, more able to do other great things, then I think that's where a lot of these people are coming from. I'm sure there's many that are coming from an ego standpoint too, but it's thank you for clarifying that for me, that I think that that's part of some of our growth, our personal growth, to be able to know that we can even do more. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and continue talking about fear of living the best that we can. We'll be back in just a moment. Stress-free living. Stay with us. Sudeep, I apologize. I had to cut you off. I was getting the signs here that we were running long. If you'd like to continue, or anybody else, we'll have just a few minutes left.
And I was just, it's a very thought-provoking, things that Luigi is talking about. I think as we are conditioned to a great degree by our environment, what we hear from our parents and grandparents and whatnot. I think the question really, I think to me, as we have raised our children, is to what degree do you give them a blank sheet, and to what degree do you give them some lines to color in between, right? Those are sort of the two extremes, in a way, right? I think the way we have looked at it or approached it, I'm not sure it's right or what or wrong, is telling them where the lines are and what happens when you draw or color in between, and what happens. You really want, as an insurance policy, you really want them not to do something that could have a deep, catastrophic type of impact to their lives. And that's something that you have learned during the course of your life, watching others be successful or do well, and watching failures as well. So I don't know what the best thing is, but I think it's a very challenging thing as a parent, to, I guess, navigate through. So I'm all ears for what Luigi is talking about. Maybe in the next life for sure. Or teach our kids how they can do things with their kids or with our grandkids.
Very, very good thoughts. I hope to come back. Actually, I think it's a good way to end it up with that question. So Ratanjit, be prepared. We're coming back in a second here. We're back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi, yours truly, Ray Samich, talking today about living our best life and not having a fear of living. Ratanjit, we only have a few minutes left. One of our wonderful guests posed the question that says, going back to my example of coloring within the lines or just coloring on a blank sheet of paper, what should we be teaching our children? Should we be teaching them that sometimes you do have to color in the lines and pay attention to the rules and try to make as pretty a picture as you can with your own creativity within the lines? Or should we be allowing them to branch out and say, forget the lines, just go out there and color and have fun and use your imagination and your creativity that's unique to you, and do it all? What's the balance of those extremes, knowing that without the lines they could get hurt, they could be hurt, something catastrophic could happen? What's the fine line? What's the that fence that we are supposed to walk so that we don't let our children be hurt?
There are two things we can teach: doing the things right or doing the right things. Most of our education or training is all focused on doing things right. We make them very efficient, but we never give them wisdom to distinguish between wrong and right. We end up, all humanity, doing the things which are doing very well, very right, but we never do the right things. So when your mind is controlled by your human body mode, it's always focused on doing things more, better. But it is only in the oneness mode, when your mind is directed by the divine force within you, then only we know what are the right things to do. So we climb the wrong mountains. We become very efficient at this. But we never select the right mountain where there is wisdom. So fundamentally, again, you can only live when you have no fear. And fear disappears when you have no, you do not relate to this human body as you. You become free of the fear of death. You consider yourself as the force which gives you life, the divine force which is present in you and everyone else. And that is when that happens, when that controls your mind, you begin to really live. And that living is purpose-filled. It is always adding value to others, always serving others. It is not about whatever you are doing. It is not about collecting trophies. It is always adding value, right?
You said the wrong mountains to climb, and I really have respect for people that climb mountains for the right reasons, to show their discipline for themselves. Not again, not in a bragging way, not in a trophy attaining way, but just to have that discipline and that motivation and that determination to be able to do something like that. But you just said the wrong mountains to climb. We choose the wrong mountains to climb. And I really love that, because it's also very difficult to do other things. We know it's difficult to climb a mountain, but it's difficult to go where others don't go, to do what other people don't do. It's difficult to put ourselves out there in a lot of other ways. And now that you've expressed that thought to me, it's almost like climbing a mountain isn't the most difficult thing. It might be much more difficult to add the highest value in a setting where that isn't easily done because of people telling you you're wrong, because of peer pressure, because of whatever it might be. And you've opened my eyes to the fact that, we all probably have a mountain that we can climb, but it may not be a mountain at all. It may be something that we need to accomplish that we're capable of doing.
We always choose to do extraordinary things, but we don't do ordinary things extraordinarily. Adding value happens when you serve a coffee with dignity, rather than serving the most expensive coffee.
Right.
Doing ordinary things extraordinarily is serving your divine. You don't get medals or trophies by doing ordinary things extraordinarily. always get trophies and medal by doing extraordinary things ordinarily.
Right, right. It's a good way to end it. I'll let that be your last word, Ratanjit. Thank you for sharing all your thoughts here, trying to explain this to me and hopefully in a way that helps a lot of other people be inspired by this. Thank you for your time and your love, your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your time with us here today on this edition of Stress Free Living. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. We'll talk to you again real soon. All right, we are clear. Who would like to share a thought?
Sandy, did
lost
it
Sudeep.
make any sense?
We lost Sudeep. We have Sandy and Jagjit.
No, everything was fine. No much comments. Everything is good.
Sandy,
Thank you.
anything you want to add?
Sandy, only have a few of us today, Sandy. You're standing out here. Thanks for being with us. We
Yeah,
need
but I
you
guess
to.
it's a long weekend, a lot of people traveling. I happen to be in Montreal at my mom's house, so enjoying a nice breakfast here in time. So, beautiful
Nice.
show, very nice show. I like the ending. I really like how you guys, it does come down to uh, the ego, and it does come down to conditioning and so on when it comes to the fear. But ultimately, the last line about doing your regular everyday things extraordinarily is so true. In fact, last year, almost this time, another month out, I was at Tony Robbins' event, and he's like, we strive so hard to be great, and he's like, or get these big honors, and his thought was, just do your everyday stuff, but do it outstanding. Just be outstanding in those things that you do. So a great reminder of how important that is. And I'm sure if you do things at that level, just on your everyday stuff, a lot of the fear starts to go away. We focus so much on the doubt, which then when you focus on the doubt, it builds up the fear. But if we focus on other things, just doing things and doing them outstanding, then I'm sure we can live a much better, stronger life.
Yeah, there's another way to look at it. When you are serving the highest power of the universe, which is present in each one of us, you're serving that. How can you do ordinarily? You have to do extraordinary, anything, the language you use. You stand in front of a king, you cannot stand with the torn jeans. You have to be properly dressed. You have to serve whatever, even a glass of water, you have to serve with dignity. And that is what is called doing ordinary things extraordinarily.
Love it. It's very, very nice. Very beautiful.
And that's the chance that we have every day. I mean, we talk about climbing mountains. We talked a lot about that. That's something you have to plan for, and you do it maybe a couple times in your life, if at all. But 100 times a day, we are doing ordinary things, and we can do them extraordinarily.
Yeah.
So that's something every single one of us can accomplish over and over again.